Today, we're diving into a system in crisis, one that honestly affects millions and millions of young lives. We're calling this one Broken Chalk: How Indian Education Became a Marketplace. Sometimes the biggest failures, they don't announce themselves with a big crash or a bang. Nope, they happen quietly, almost invisibly, right under our noses. They just crack, silently, kind of like a piece of chalk dropped in an empty classroom. And that, right there, is the story we're getting into today. The silent, almost hidden fracturing of India's entire education system. So how on earth did we get here? I mean, for generations, education in India was seen as this public good, right? A fundamental right for everyone. But somewhere over the last couple of decades, that whole foundation just cracked. It's completely morphed into this high-stakes race, a marketplace, really, where the finish line is pretty much decided by the size of your wallet. Okay, to really get how this happened, you gotta follow the money. So let's look at some truly staggering numbers that show, well, how learning itself has been packaged up and sold, just like any other product on a shelf. First things first, what do we even mean by an education marketplace? Well, it's pretty simple. It's a system where curiosity, that takes a backseat to pure competition. Profit becomes the main goal, and success, it's not measured by what you learn anymore, but by where you rank. That's the key difference. All right, let's start with the sheer scale of the competition. Just look at this. In 2023, you had over 43,000 brilliant students who qualified for the GE Advanced. I mean, that's one of the world's toughest engineering exams. It's an incredible achievement, no doubt. But that number, it hides a really brutal reality. Because for all those qualified students, there were only 17,000 seats available across all the prestigious IITs. Just let that sink in for a second. Less than half of the most qualified students even have a shot at getting in. And that scarcity right there is the engine that fuels this whole marketplace. So who profits from all this scarcity? You guessed it, this absolutely massive coaching industry. We're talking a 75,000 crore rupee behemoth. It's basically a parallel education universe. And it's built not on the joy of discovery, but on the very real fear of being left behind. And the last piece of this, let's call it a financial puzzle, is debt. Pure and simple. With degrees costing anywhere from 8 to 12 lakh rupees, the national student loan burden has just ballooned past 11,000 crore rupees. And what that means is, for way too many graduates, their first career choice isn't driven by their dreams. It's driven by their debt. But look, these aren't just numbers on a screen, right? They represent a real human cost. This is about the insane pressure we're putting on students and their families. Because when a student's passion goes head-to-head with their monthly loan payment, well, the loan payment wins. It almost always wins. This quote from a parent, man, it just captures the heart of the issue so perfectly. What used to be a fundamental hope, to see your child get a good education, has now been turned into a luxury item, something that's only really accessible if you can afford the crazy high price tag. And what this does is create this deep, damaging divide. You end up with two completely parallel tracks. On one track, you've got kids with tablets, AC classrooms, and all the expensive coaching they could need. And on the other, you've got dust, heat, and just the sheer force of hope against some pretty overwhelming odds. So what's the end result of this super high-cost, super high-pressure system? Honestly, this chart is just staggering. After all that money, all that competition, all that debt, nearly half, 48% of Indian graduates end up working in fields that have absolutely nothing to do with their degree. And we need to be crystal clear about this. This isn't a story about 48% of students failing, not at all. This is the story of a system failing. A system that failed to prepare them for the actual real world. It's a systemic breakdown, plain and simple, not a personal failure. So why? Why is there such a massive disconnect between getting a degree and getting a job? Well, that failure to prepare students, it's not an accident. It actually points to a much deeper structural problem in the economy itself. A problem we can pretty much call India's innovation gap. This chart right here tells a really powerful story. See, countries that truly innovate, they invest. You can see it plain as day. South Korea puts 4.8% of its GDP into industrial R&D. The US, 3.4%. And then you have India at a tiny 0.7%. That's not a gap, people. That's a chasm. So what does this actually mean in the real world? Like, what are the consequences when a country with this huge pool of talent underinvests so dramatically in innovation? Well, the consequences are direct and they are damaging. Without that strong industry R&D, what happens in college? Learning becomes all about memorizing for exams, not innovating for the future. Degrees, they just become labels you collect, not actual launchpads for a career. And that explains so much. It explains why India can produce the world's largest number of engineers, yet contribute less than 1% to global high-impact patents. Okay, but this isn't just about a broken system. We have to talk about how it can be fixed. We need to rebuild that bridge between the classroom and the actual workplace. So what does a new path forward even look like? This powerful question from Dr. Celestine Lawrence, it just gets right to the heart of it all. Think about it. The system we have now forces students to start their journey in debt and to start their creative process in fear of failure. Any new system has to do the exact opposite. It has to reverse that completely. So what are the actual solutions here? Well, the path forward involves some really concrete, actionable reforms. Just imagine this: paid apprenticeships right from year one, giving students real-world skills and an income while they learn. Picture industry-funded stipends for the top students, rewarding talent instead of saddling it with debt. It's all about forging stronger, direct links between colleges and companies, and that in turn is going to help reduce that crushing burden of student loans. When you boil it all down, the goal is simple. We have to shift the entire focus of education. We need to create an environment where students are empowered to build things, to innovate, not just memorize a bunch of facts for the next exam. And this kind of brings us full circle, back to where we started. The system might be fractured, yeah, but it is not beyond repair. Because even a broken piece of chalk, it can still be used to write a whole new story. So, this leaves us all with one final critical question. The path forward, it requires more than just new policies. It demands a fundamental shift in how we all think about this. The question is, how can India transform its education system from a marketplace back into a promise for a better future, not just a bidding war for the highest price?